differ at the end of the day. I think a key driver and the difference is the equity culture in each market. And I think where the US stands out is that it has such a depth and has such a sort of wide scope in terms of the equity culture that the US market has, both in terms of sectors, but in terms of the overall appetite for risk and reflecting that in the equity markets. And I think certain European markets stand out in that equity culture as well. The UK has for years. Our Swedish market, Nasdaq, has owned the Nordic markets, the Stockholm market since 2008, has also a great equity culture. And that's why we see a continuous listing appetite in these markets.
And we're seeing this trend of cross-border poaching, if you will. How do exchanges compete to really attract companies?
Well, listen, I think at the end of the day, the companies are more savvy than it's the exchange per se that they're looking at. They're looking at the markets. They're looking for that equity culture. They're looking for that support. They're looking for a market that will support them, not only from a financial point of view, but also from a commercial point of view. Because at the end of the day, the IPO is so much more about than just raising capital. It's a platform for growth. It's visibility, it's credibility. It's about attracting and recruiting new talent. There's so many different assets coming with an IPO. And the US market, at the end of the day, for the right company, makes a lot of sense. And it's not for everyone. But in certain sectors, definitely, we see a predominance in the US. The healthcare sector is one of those.
Now, if we can speak about Nasdaq specifically. Now, rules between the exchanges, I guess, do differ. And if I'm not mistaken, rules have been tweaked. The one share, one vote rule, for example, to let in the likes of Facebook and Alibaba. I mean, is that fair market play?
Well, listen, at the end of the day, you can't do anything that does sort of deminimizes the credibility of the market. So at the end of the day, this is whatever rules are changed, at the end of the day, have to maintain the credibility of the market. So what you have in the US is an overall appetite for risk. And that risk has allowed for a bit more flexibility. But at the end of the day, it still maintains a high level of regulatory environment and regulatory standards. And I would probably say that the US market, from an overall regulatory standpoint, is probably the highest. But at the same time, you see Hong Kong changing its rules, you see London changing its rules. And this is just a part of evolution. The financial markets are changing, dynamics are changing, and the markets have to evolve. But at the end of the day, they have to maintain credibility. That's a key aspect.
So what is it you do, Adam, to ensure a successful IPO?
So basically, I head up the listing business. And so that means taking care of the 900 plus companies in Europe that are listed on Nordic exchanges and the 200 companies that are listed or dual listed in the US. What we do is make sure that we support our companies as a listed company, but also in the IPO process, make sure that we have an active dialogue as much as possible with the company, because at the end of the day, the relationship with the advisors, that's an engagement, but the relationship with the exchange is a marriage. So we need to make sure that we are supporting the companies with services, visibility, and making sure that they transition into the public environment in the smoothest way possible. Because what one has to keep in mind is that you can do things efficiently. And if you do things efficiently, you lower the cost and you maximize the value of being a listed company. And that's where we as Nasdaq can help the companies in achieving.
Now, how actively do you go after business in Switzerland?
Well, listen, Switzerland is, first of all, we have a great partnership with the SIX exchange. We provide technology to them, so that's a key part of our partnership, and we've had that partnership for many years, something we're very proud of. At the end of the day, we're not actively targeting the Swiss market. What we see is that certain sectors are actively targeting the US market. We want to make sure that we're supporting them in that process, and that's why we're here. We actually have one Swiss company that's now planning to list in the Nordics, in Stockholm, a company called Divio. We have a number of companies that are dual listed here, like ABB, etc. So yes, we are targeting the companies. We are making sure that we're engaged in a dialogue. But at the end of the day, the companies are more savvy than that, and they're targeting the US market. We want to make sure that Nasdaq is the right partner for them.
However, I mean, it is a lucrative market, wouldn't you say? Many have said that valuations, for example, are comparably low.
You mean lucrative in the sense for us as a business?
Yes.
So, I mean, listings is a core of the exchange. It's the heart and blood of the exchange. The companies are, and that's very important for us. So at the end of the day, it is important that this IPO market is existing. It's interesting for the advisors, if the advisors are seeing an opportunity in this. But at the end of the day, it has to be a zero-sum game in the sense that everybody has to make a profit from this. But for us, what we are looking at is making sure that we are making that transition into the public market as efficient as possible for the company. So we're investing a lot in that. And at the end of the day, we want to make sure that companies choose our platform, and we want to make ourselves as attractive as possible for the companies in order to choose that platform.
Do you have to turn many away?
Well, listen, many companies do not succeed in that process. That's the regulatory scrutiny. If we help them prepare in that process, we see a higher success rate. So we try to engage as early as possible to make sure that we are supporting the companies, both in the US, but also in our Nordic markets. And we've seen a good success rate. And the more knowledge there is in the market, the more expertise and the more, sort of savoir-faire in terms of managing that process. And from that perspective, you see a higher success rate. But at the end of the day, it's always a sensitive process, the IPO.
But no plans to set up office like some of your competitors in Switzerland right now?
No, we're not planning to do that. We work with the SIX Exchange as a partner, but we are supporting the companies that want to list in the US, and we are supporting companies that want to list in the Nordics, but we're not opening up an office.
And SIX are open to that? They support that?
Listen, they know that the market dynamics is not a reflection of them. It's more a reflection of the local ecosystem. In the US, you have an ecosystem which is equity-driven, much more than maybe here. So I think it's not a reflection of their bad work. It's more a reflection of the ecosystem that we have in the US.
Lovely, Adam. Thank you very much for joining us and
Thank you.
Clearing that up.